Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Geoff Dover. With me is John Barban, and let's get to the big question.
All right, today's big question is, will Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter not showing up to the combine or not competing in the combine going to really affect their draft stock or not? And I know there's other people that are doing the same thing, but these
But it's
are the
different
two
for
that
them.
sort of jump off the page.
Yeah.
It's a little different for them.
Yeah, because QBs always go high, right? And it's not a super strong QB draft, but Shedeur Sanders is one of the best QBs that's available.
Yep.
And we haven't seen a player like Travis Hunter in the college in a really long time, if ever, right? That does what he did in wide receiver and DB. So what's the impact going to be, do you think, for them not competing at putting any numbers up at the combine?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so if we want to take a little bit of a historic look, like going back to Deion, because that's their kind of mentor, and well, it's one of their fathers, and the other one's also father figure. He did run at the combine, and we have, I guess until Xavier Worthy broke the record, it was Deion had the record for the 40-yard dash. It was something like 4:27 hand time, though, right? No electronics. And then some people speculate it could have been a 4:25 if you account for some small delay in the ability to do it by hand. Regardless, that's really, really fast, and that was, I guess, a standing record literally until this past year.
Yeah, back then it was a little different. It wasn't shown on TV. They didn't have the technology wasn't as good for measuring the 40 time. But Deion has famously been like, his players aren't going to opt out of stuff like for the games and play. And so it's a little surprising that they didn't compete or put any numbers down for the combine. But I think that specifically for Shedeur, I think it would only hurt. Like, he's one of the best QBs available, and that's not going to change. And so the only way he would go lower is if he put some bad numbers up in terms of his arm strength or athleticism or something like that. So I don't think that there was anything he could have done to increase his stock at the draft. So I think he'll be like a top 4 or 5 pick, probably just because of the need for QB.
Yeah.
Hunter, on the other side, I think he could have increased his draft stock if he put up a crazy 40 time or something like that, because, at the end of the day, he's an athlete, and that's what's going to get him a higher draft point. And so, if he put up some good numbers, that would have made him a lot more money.
Do you think his slight stature, the fact that he's kind of thin, might affect? I mean, you watch his tape; he's so good.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he's more impressive as a DB.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think the safety for South Carolina was a monster, but he didn't look like it on TV, but he's 6'3", 220, and he just benched 225 20 times. So like, I don't know how much Hunter would have had to have done to like.
I don't
really
think he's
stand
benching
out
it at all. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? Who knows? He just doesn't look like a physical specimen the way that guy does. But it doesn't matter on the field. He was that good.
Yeah,
God, he was good as a receiver too. When I think about him, I'm like, oh yeah, he's a better DB. But then when I think about him as a receiver, God, he's a good receiver too.
Well, so this is going to be the problem for NFL teams that take him, right? Because this reminds me of recruits. Like, if you have a really good, tight end or something like that, who also was like played basketball and baseball, when you recruit them into football, and then you're going to dedicate all your time to tight end, like their ceiling is way higher because it's just a good overall athlete. And so, the NFL team's going to have to make a decision whether they're going to say like, okay, we're going to put you at wide receiver only and then see how high the ceiling can get, or put you at DB only and see how high the ceiling's going to get, or he's probably going to want to play both. And then what does that mean in terms of impact you're going to have?
What do you think he's best suited without right now? What's your guess that he's better suited for in pro?
I put DB. I think having a really good DB would make more of a difference with the team, because he's not a dominant wide receiver. Now, I don't want to say he's not a bad wide receiver, right? He's a good wide receiver, but I'm talking about like a difference maker. Like Devontae Smith was a Heisman caliber wide receiver, and he's good at the NFL. Like, he's not taking it over.
Heisman,
right?
He won the Heisman. Yeah,
I know. And so Hunter, I don't know if his ceiling at wide receiver is as high as it is. I think DB, he could be, an all-star
Yeah.
DB
I don't
shortly.
know though.
Like,
I think he could. I mean, my first thought is, oh, he's kind of small for receiver, but there are good small receivers. Like Tank
yeah,
Dell's really good,
yeah,
and Devontae Smith is a perfect example
yep.
of someone who's excelling at the NFL level. Like if Travis Hunter's on one side, man, how about this, and Jamar Chase on the other? Like if
Mm,
they can't, oh, I guess they are. It sounds like they are re-signing Higgins, but I'm just thinking, where would he? I'm trying to recreate in my head AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. What
mhm.
teams? And Travis Hunter's the new Devontae Smith, but and also on the cheap, right? He's a rookie.
Yep.
What team has got a stud, physical specimen receiver on one side? I mean, the Bengals, perfect example, and they need him on defense too. I don't know that he'll make it to the Bengals pick, but just a thought of recreating the AJ Brown Devontae Smith dynamic somewhere else.
Mm.
Some teams have the big body guy, the physical specimen guy, but where could you recreate that? Seattle, Metcalf, and then I don't think they're going to be retaining one of their other receivers. So just an idea of where he could be as a receiver. But then when I think of him as a DB, man, that's in short supply. Like a shutdown corner is such a big deal to have.
Yeah,
And
and it's great that you're listing all those teams that could potentially have him. But just a quick reminder of what the first 8 picks are. It's Tennessee, Cleveland, the Giants, Patriots, Jaguars, Raiders, Jets, Carolina. Like that's where he's going to go.
you're right.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
he's not going to have
Yeah.
no, he's not going to have the
Sorry, I
good
wasn't discounting to the fans of all those teams that he can't make it to your team. He's obviously not going to make it to the teams I'm thinking of.
yeah, like there's the San Fran at 11. If something colossal happened and like that, that's a great place for someone to make his first wide receiver debut, like it's
Yeah.
but yeah, he's not going to make it that long. So
No.
it's so it's just a question if like Belichick is going to be the kind of guy that's okay, or sorry, the Patriots are going to be okay
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of guy that does
Vrabel.
both DB and wide receiver or not. Like
He seems a little old school. I almost think that would have to be one of
yeah,
these new school guys. Oh well, I mean,
yeah.
he's good, man. He's really
He's really
good,
good.
and I
He's
don't
really good.
think his absence of the combine matters at all. It's his. Still speaking of Hunter, his tape of what he does as a DB is what always jumps out in my memory. Like breaking off his own route, like interceptions, like that one goal line. He picked off. He had an amazing
Oh, yeah.
interception on the goal line where he strayed from his responsibility to another
Yep.
one, which he does a lot. He just kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And then the game winning stop on the goal line, like a good tackle too. So even though
Mhm.
he's slight, he is a really sound tackler.
He is.
And yeah, I guess even though he's a good receiver, that blends into me with, I can think of other guys like McMillan or both receivers on Iowa State impressed. Actually, both there's just guys like Luther Burden. There's guys out there that can impress at
Mhm.
receiver just as much as him, if not more. I can't think of too many DBs who impressed me as much as him in the DB role. I mean, there are other good ones, obviously at Michigan. They're all over the place, but he's you're right. He pops more to me as a cornerback than as a receiver in the
Yeah.
mix of who else is there. But with that said, he still pops on both. He just pops more as a corner to me compared to his receiver.
Well, and again, just to look at the combine results for DBs as of, today, Maxwell Harrison for Kentucky ran a 4.2840. Guy Porter for Iowa State ran a 4.340. Some guy from Tulane ran a 4.33. The Jacob Parrish from Kansas State ran a 4.35. Like, so there's some
These guys are
fast
fast.
DBs.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I don't know if that exactly translates to success of the NFL, but
Yeah.
so, I mean, but anyway, here's what I think. If I had to predict, I think a GM's going to have to tell him, yeah, we're okay with you playing both ways until we're about 4 games in and he's getting beat for sort of the first time by NFL wide receivers. And then there's going to be a conversation about how about we just focus on this for now until this tightens up.
If I had to guess, I think he's going to go. If I had to guess, I think he's going to mimic Deion and be primarily a defensive player that also gets offensive snaps.
Yeah.
It's just my guess. I have no idea. But
for sure,
the guess.
first half of the season, he'll get like a 3 to 5 offensive plays a game, to start, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Yeah, and then I guess with Sanders, to your point with Shedeur, it's just there's not that many highlight. Now I think there's quarterbacks throughout this class that are going to be steals later on.
Yes,
that aren't getting as much hype. he's just, I mean, he's Deion's kid. He is good everywhere he went. Like the 2 schools he played at, they got a lot better when he was there.
Well, and that was a point that I was going to make too, is that I always have a soft spot for QBs that are on bad teams, you know, like, because when they have a bad offensive line or not a great running game, it's all on you. And he really did make the teams better that he was on. And there was especially the first, like last season for Colorado and the first half of this season, like the offensive line play and defensive line play was horrendous. And we made a point of that.
Really bad.
Yeah. And then it got better later, but at the beginning it was all him. So that really, you know, considering he was that productive on that, with that supporting cast around him, is a good thing.
Yeah. And so the question there is, God, that line was bad. Now the question there is does he have like the physical traits? I mean, he's actually a pretty big kid. He's got a good arm. His accuracy's on point. He seems to understand where to go with the ball, but the knock on him was he got sacked a lot. Now, is that the line, or is that him holding it too long, or is he holding it that long because he's immediately fighting he's got to find time for himself because the line's not allowing him to have like a nice clean pocket.
Wide receivers aren't getting separation.
Oh, well, maybe not. But if he might not be able to see it if he's immediately trying to run, he might not even notice that somebody's open if he's trying to, run for his life sort of thing. One thing I saw on Ross Tucker's podcast, Greg Cosell does a really good breakdown of quarterbacks. And they were both pointing out that it tends to be the case that if you get sacked a lot in college, you get sacked a lot in pros, and there's just data. There's enough data to show that just keeps happening. It doesn't matter who the player is; it just seems to be consistent. So now it doesn't mean you can't get better. It just means on average, if you got sacked a lot in college, you're likely going to get sacked a lot in the pros. So the question there is a guy like Sanders just overall just holds the ball too long, and if he's in the NFL. We don't know. I mean, maybe it's not the case if he ends up on a team with a stellar offensive line, but there's no way his offensive line in the NFL could be as bad as Colorado.
No.
I don't know. Maybe it could, but the question is that going to follow him, or is it a byproduct of the weakness of the Colorado offensive line?
Yeah, and I think it's the other, like some of the who know we're not going to sit here and say like with 100% accuracy who's going to work out and who doesn't, right?
No, nobody will know.
If you had that answer, you wouldn't be sitting here. You'd be on your yacht somewhere with the little umbrella drinks and stuff. But it was so, the intangible stuff, like how hard he works, going the film room, first one in, last one out kind of stuff like that, which I believe some of that was instilled by his father, with the team and realizing what it's going to take to be a professional. Right. So, I mean, we'll see, but that's he's going to go higher than he deserves. I'm going to say that. Just because it's a weaker QB draft. But it doesn't mean it's not going to work out. So, but I'm with you. Yeah. Who are you more excited about in terms of working out? Shedeur Sanders or Kyle McCord?
Oh, that's a good question. Because McCord's been one of our darlings.
You've got a soft spot for him. He's got a good arm.
I definitely have a soft spot for McCord.
And you talk about someone that did well at 2 different schools too, like made them better.
And also he fits the mold. And there's something about how the ball just like snaps out of his hand. It's just every time I see him throw, I'm like, that's an NFL throw.
Yep.
I can't break him down the way Cosell breaks quarterbacks down or the way O'Sullivan does. But in general, he's pretty good, and I think someone's going to be happy. Some fan base who gets McCord, who hasn't been following McCord the way you and I have, is going to be pleasantly surprised that they've got him on the roster. That's my guess. I think the same thing will happen with Jackson Dart. But comparing McCord to Sanders, I think Deion Sanders, is old school when it comes to his coaching and his preparation, even though there's hype all over the place with these two guys and they have like true NIL. They're actually on commercials for like food and all kinds of stuff. Like there really are celebrities.
Yes.
They're both good football players, but I think it seems as though all indications point that Deion would be a great mentor for like work ethic, what it really takes to win at the NFL level, because he's done it all. And being prepared for the transition to the NFL, like who he knows that. He knows exactly how this is all going to unfold. No matter who picks them or where they go, he'll know how to coach them. Okay, right now, this is what you're going to be feeling. This is these are the hurdles at this stage. These are the hurdles that there can't be a better mentor than him, right? So as far as I almost think it's a foregone conclusion. He'll work out. Like he's got so much guidance here. Not that all these other players have zero, but they have maybe one of the best people guiding them through. So I'm more excited to see it work for McCord just because there's less chatter, and also because Ohio State let him go, and then they win the championship without him. But he lights it up the whole season with Syracuse while he's not there. So to me, it's almost a redemption story setting itself up. Like if McCord finally makes it in the pros, and maybe, I mean, the coolest thing ever would be him against Will Howard in the pros, and sort of McCord outpaces him. And it's like, oh, that's the guy they passed on. They passed me up for this guy, but I'm better than him in the NFL. So I'm not trying to like rag on Will Howard or anything. I hope he does well too. But to me, that would be, to answer your question, that would be the satisfying story of seeing it come full circle. He's on Ohio State. They let him go, and then coming full circle, and he makes it in the NFL.
Yeah.
But again, I think Shedeur will be fine. I kind of want to see Shedeur at the Raiders. I just don't know if that'll work out.
Yeah, that's good. Because 6, maybe. Depends, because
so where do you think he'll end up?
I have no idea. I really don't know. Like, because
Giants.
I was going to say that leads us into our next section really well, because this is a really deep defensive line draft,
right?
And there's a lot of first round grades. So depending on your need as a team or where you are in the draft, that might move over. So should we move over to our Saturday spotlight?
Yeah, let's do a Saturday spotlight. So we're going to focus on the college side of this thing, being this is probably the deepest defensive line upcoming draft class that I can remember. This is an insane draft class.
Yeah.
And I think shall we just jump into some of these players here? I mean, I think Abdul Carter's the biggest namesake here. And
according to him, he is.
Okay, that's true. And you know what? I do like the confidence that I'm the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Like you almost sort of, I don't want to really rag on him for coming out like that.
No,
and I was reviewing his tape last night. They use him just like Micah Parsons. And I don't know if that's a Penn State thing now. And I know the number 11 is a thing now since LeVar Arrington. It's a big deal to wear number 11 at Penn State. But Micah Parsons has no position. They just wherever he wants to be. He's actually he'll play linebacker. He'll go interior. He'll go edge. Just I don't even know there's a word for what you do with him. But Carter, out of all of the guys on all the defensive ends that are in this class, Carter's the only one that I think that gets used like that, where he's dropping into coverage. He's on the edge. He'll be in the middle. He'll just be wherever he wants to be. Kayvon Thibodeau used to a little bit like that, right?
A little bit. Yep.
So he seems like the most versatile. I mean, I don't think size. Some people, he's not a traditional like big 270-pound defensive end, but I don't think it matters. He is fast. He knows where he's going. Maybe there's some injury concern, but I don't know. He looked pretty good. He looked pretty good this year.
But in just Carter looks amazing. I don't know how much of a drop off there is to Shedeur Stewart, the Texas A&M guy, because that guy's an absolute monster. Or the guy from Marshall, like he looks really good too, and the one from Tennessee is really good.
Mike Green, James Pierce from Tennessee. I was watching all of their tape last night. They're all fast. They're all really fast off the edge. I know that people have Green ranked really, really high out of Marshall. It's just there's always the question of competition. Like Marshall was beating up on. He's not up against SEC linemen the whole time. So if you were. I know a couple shows ago we mentioned this, especially after watching the Eagles' defensive line completely dominate the Super Bowl. Somebody was like, "Don't overthink this thing, GMs. When it comes draft time, pick guys off of SEC teams or Big Ten teams. Don't. I mean, their lines just all Georgia players. It's fine. You don't need to try to be clever here, finding the guy on the small school. So I mean, I guess Mike Green's the only sort of small school player here from Marshall, but Texas A&M's got a couple big representatives here. Georgia, Mikael Williams. There's
Birch
players here.
Oregon,
yes. Jordan Birch has been one I've been following. He's 300 pounds, but he plays end.
I know that's crazy. Like
he's a freak.
That really says something when you're 40 is that low too, right? It was a 0.1 second in the 40s is a decent amount of time. Like that, you're slower than the other person. Like that, there's no doubt about that. But 0.1 seconds slower with 30 more pounds on, and for an edge, like this isn't a wide receiver position or linebacker. We're gonna have to cover that much distance, that is an unbelievable athlete.
Yeah. and JTT from Ohio State. I mean,
Yep.
there's serious talent in this in the with the ends. And if we want to go on to the
tackles
the
too.
interior, I mean, both interior tackles or interior linemen from Michigan, Graham and oh god, what's the other guy's name here? Graham and Grant.
Grant.
Yeah, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. They're both, I mean, Grant's massive too. So, and they've been churning defensive players into the NFL lately. But I think Graham's legit. He just looks the part. When his tape is there, I don't care what happens. For any of these guys, I just don't think it matters what happens at the combine. The tape is what matters.
The only thing I'll point out about that with the edge, like with some of the people we were talking about before, when it comes to stats, I think sometimes at this position, especially with defensive tackle, you can't rate the position based on sacks alone, right? Because a really good edge player is going to get double teamed every game. And it's just that you require a double team really says a lot about you, like on every play, because that's every run, every pass play. You've got, two people have to count that. And we've seen games where all of a sudden it's just a tight end blocking someone and you're like, what are you doing? Because he literally runs around and through a person and blows something up, right? So that's really what, and so that's my only concern for the Marshall guy, because he had like 15 or so sacks or 20, something like that. And it was I don't know who he's playing against in Marshall, and it's going to be different there than somewhere else. So, but anyway, and same with some of the D tackles. Like they were listing some of the stats, and they're like, well, this guy had 3 sacks or 6 tackles for a loss. And I'm like, that's not going to matter, because that's every center and guard you took on every time.
It matters if they have to game plan around you.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the big deal. I saw a funny graphic about Aaron Donald. And every now and then there's like an image of 4 players blocking him, like a still image of like 4, like a tight end and 3 linemen. And it's just him and they're all blocking. And so I saw like a collage of images like that. And the caption was something like, just to remind you how good he was. And it's like double teams, triple teams, quadruple teams. And I was like, oh yeah, like that's the sort of play where he's not going to have a statistic at all on that play, but he's absorbed. The entire offensive line was focused just on him. So, I mean, I guess that's to your point with some of these guys. It's the stats don't really tell the story. That's why you got to go back and watch them. So I was a guy that I think is going to really hit here is Nolan from Ole Miss, and Walter Nolan. And I just remember this was a little painful. We're Gator alumni, and when I was watching some of the film, it's like a lot of his highlights are against Florida. So, yeah. Anyways, I just remember watching Ole Miss this year, and I constantly caught myself saying, "Is that Nolan again?" I just kept saying that because the guy was just where it needed to be, and he was just a dominant presence in the middle of that line.
Yeah, no, I love, and again, you mentioned the 2 tackles for Michigan. The most notable game this year to me was when Michigan beat Ohio State, and Ohio State kept trying to run the ball, and they were a big part of
wall.
like not being able to get through that. And and we talked about that on the show about, if something it's not working, you got to do something else. And it was this Ryan Day's hubris or whatever it is that kept him to doing that. But like there's a reason why Michigan, edge and D tackles are ranked so high this year, like in the draft.
Well, and they did it to Alabama in the bowl game too.
Yep. Yes.
I don't know if that was a much talked about bowl game, but that was a hell of a season for Michigan, coming through to the end there and just starting to beat big time teams at the end.
Yeah.
So with no quarterback, they're going to reload. Now they have the best player in the country coming up from high school. We'll see. All right. Well,
the last thing I'll say about that is that the D tackles and edges, like it's a really important position in the NFL too. So those are they're highly
3, quarterback, left guard, and right straight to that.
Left tackle, you mean? I think so.
Left tackle. Yes,
left guard, possibly the least important position.
Yep.
No, we don't.
Definitely meant tackle.
Don't write in all left guards. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys are a really important piece of the offensive line. So, but it's that's the QB, edge rushers, the dominant wide receiver. Like there's a few positions that are really coveted. So that, and they're first round grades, a lot of these players. So, you're getting a good value for some. Now it's I don't know if, if do the Giants really need a good edge rusher right now? Is that going to fix stuff for them, or it's a, I don't know. But anyway, but it's
And the
they're going to
thing
get
is,
they're going to get some quality people. Is the
yeah, and
point?
you don't need to spend a high pick because there's so many
Yeah,
good players here.
yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, I
There
mean,
was
if you've already got your QB,
Mhm.
which like a team like not Carolina, I don't know the
Yeah,
Page.
man,
Well,
just like
I like. No,
Carolina.
hang on. To be fair, I like Bryce Young. I hope he makes it,
Better
and he
second half than any
really
part
turned
of
it on.
yeah.
Yes, at the end of this past season, but maybe like the Patriots, that they're Drake May looks like it's enough. Like he's there.
Yep.
Well, they could focus on some of these something on defense. I think their O line needs work too. But like teams that have the quarterback in place, they could spend an high pick on one of these guys, but it's so deep. I think you're going to get value at least in the second round, if not in the third,
Yeah.
with some of these D line.
Yeah.
Just how deep it is.
Absolutely. It's a great point because one of these D tackles or edge rushers is going to drop just based on numbers, right? In terms of
Numbers and need, yeah.
and a good team is going to get a good D tackle or edge guy,
Yeah.
low in the first round. And that, like that's going to,
kind of like how the Eagles stole Carter.
well, I know, right? And it's if you think about some of the lower, like the Rams at 26, the Ravens at 27, the Lions at 28,
The
like
Lions,
they're
if the Lions can
right.
bolster their line, yeah.
That'd
Hutchinson
be a
on one side and
yes.
just
And
trying to
so
think
and
of who, man, like if the Tennessee
yeah,
edge dropped to there or somebody
I
like
know.
that. I don't know.
Yep. So that's
It's going to
there.
be
So
really interesting. I'm kind of more keyed in on this than anything moving into next season is how all of these defensive line prospects actually work out. Because it seems as though it's just, I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I think they're all better than they really are. But so far on tape, this just looks like an amazing D-line class.
no, I think it is rated one of the best D line classes, and that's but we've talked about this before. Hitting a position in the draft, like picking correctly makes a difference in the
Huge
NFL.
difference.
And we've seen that with the Eagles this
Yeah.
year. A lot of it was their draft picks and that performed above expectations. So that's absolutely going to happen
Yeah.
again this year.
Yep. All right.
You ready to move on to our Sunday
yeah.
scoop?
Yeah. So Sunday scoop. Now we're going to focus a bit on the NFL here. The trending topic that Geoff brought to my attention here was really the impact that both Rodgers and Stafford, the recent moves or lack of a move with Stafford. I mean, that was a big time piece that if he'd moved, that would shake up all of the movements around the league. And
yeah,
since
so
he's staying
at time of recording, the Stafford just confirmed that he signed with the Rams.
Yep.
And so and it frees 15 million in cap space.
Yeah, because he restructured.
And so that really, what do you think that means for the Rams now?
Oh, I think they're just reloading. I mean, they were a couple plays away from being in the NFC Championship game. There's this sense, I've had this sense, maybe I'm projecting, but I just had this sense that after they won the Super Bowl and Aaron Donald retired and players left the team and they had to clear cap space or they just couldn't afford to keep players. I had this sense that, the Rams, the trade with the Lions got them what they needed. They wanted to get the Super Bowl. They got the Super Bowl, but the Lions built their future off of that trade with all like Hutchinson and Gibbs and all the picks that Laporta. God, what a good trade for them. Anyways, and Goff looks good there too. So the narrative I just kept in my head was for the Rams, it was a short-term hit, and for the Lions, it's a long-term build. But the Rams nailed so many picks after that with like Puka Nacua and Verse. Like the defense is they just reloaded because they just didn't miss in the draft for the next 2 years. They rebuilt that defense so quickly. And to me, it looks like one of the best D lines already in the NFL. And again, a couple plays away from beating the Eagles. So they're kind of still right there. And if Stafford's got another 2-3 years of peak Stafford in him, which he just did it. He just did peak Stafford right now. There's no reason to think he can't do the Brady Rodgers all the way to 40 play really well thing. If they hit a couple more in this draft, I mean, they were one of the last few teams in the NFL this year. What's this? If they actually improve? I mean, the only team that they couldn't quite get by in the playoffs there was the team that won the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
Is this not a Super Bowl contender if they hit a couple of picks right here?
Mhm.
I know,
Yeah, no,
I know
I
Cooper Kupp's a little long in the tooth now, but I don't know, man. If they hit a couple, if they do 3-4 years in a row of good drafting, they could be right there. So to me, that if that just solidifies the Rams as a serious contender, keeping and
yeah, no,
retaining
so I
Stafford.
yeah, I agree, and I think that we talked about it this year where they had a slow start and they
Hmm.
looked terrible at one point and then turned it on and we're like, "Oh, here we go." Is the Rams 'cause they've done this before. They've gone on a streak at the end and really been competitive near, by the time the playoffs started, you're like, "Oh, no one wants to play them." Now, this past year, it didn't quite work out like that. Like they weren't as on at the end, but like you said, they gave the Eagles everything they could take,
Hmm.
for that game. So yeah, I think that and so whatever, I don't know what I would say they're really missing. Like I think this would be just reloading at a couple of positions or bolstering a couple
Yeah.
positions, and then if it was the exact same team as last year, like that'd be fine too. So, I think it was really important for them. And I think the money is as important as Stafford is coming back. I think the 50 million cap space is really important because
Hmm.
that could sign like several picks, a couple like a free agent or something,
Hmm.
like that's a big deal. So that's I think they're in a great position. So they just can't start slow again. So
Well,
if
you for
and
the Rams fans' sake and the Rams' sake, you'd hope they don't. But
right, exactly. So
I mean that division's
but
up for
they're
grabs. There's not the 49ers have serious question marks. The so do the Seahawks, so do the
yeah,
Cardinals. So I'd imagine they're coming into the season the favorite in that division. I mean, they sort of they'd
if the
have to be.
Rams started slow, yeah, I agree. And if the Rams started slow again, is that now just a coaching problem? I mean, no one would ever say
Well,
that because
I don't
everyone thinks
know.
McVay's awesome,
But
right? But
and then
it's
in the last
the
5 games, they had what,
but it
4 games where they
but
gave up
because
less than 10 points or something crazy like that. I mean,
yeah,
the defense was
yeah,
just
right.
outstanding. I don't know.
Yeah, but they
So
weren't in the playoffs for like the first half of the season. So
yeah,
I don't know.
they're just
If you didn't have that beginning, they would have been in a
yeah.
way better position. So
They're such a strange team to think
anyway,
about
that
because
was
by the end of the season, they were just so good, but they were kind of an afterthought to your point. Halfway through the
well,
season, it's like, oh, they're just not good this year. And then they turned it right on.
yeah, I they were better in the second half. They still had a couple of clunkers though. Like it was
Yeah.
hold on,
But
let
I
me
just
pull this
mean
up right
I just
now.
mean the
But it's
overwhelming
the
defensive performance at the end of the year had to make you stop and think,
oh yeah.
is this defense really that good?
Yeah, they ended
Um,
up 10-7 and it was tied for first in their division. The last few games, like you said, they beat the 49ers 12-6, the Jets 19-9, the Cardinals 13-9.
yeah.
And then they also had the Saints in there that beat 24-14. So that was, like you said, it was really good. They had lost the last one against the Seahawks, but I don't know
Mm.
if that one was really how important that one was to that point. But no, and then so anyway, it was 10-7, and it was they won, was it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their last 6 games. So
Well, they turned it on when it mattered, that's for sure. So
yeah. And
shifting to
the
the
team
other.
that's
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
yeah, the team that didn't turn it on last year are the Giants. And now there's talk of
Oh boy.
them getting
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers. What do you think of this move?
Ah, man, why would just stay in New York? You're there now. I guess he must have a place there. Yeah, whatever. Same stadium. Doesn't even have to. Like, I guess I guess they must have different locker rooms. Um, I don't know. I mean, he's obviously that would be that's actually to me not a bad fit for him because I saw an article. I don't even think they have a QB on the roster. Apparently,
Yeah, that's
there's
crazy if
actually
that's
no
true. Like
QBs
that's
on that team
yeah,
right now.
because it's not Daniels. Like or what's his name?
No,
He's not
he's in
there anymore.
Minnesota. There's nobody's there.
Yeah.
So no, and nobody that would be an obvious starter. So and if Rodgers really only has a year or two left, and he wasn't terrible this past year, his statistics were they were fine. So if he
Yep.
really has just a couple years left, and he knows that, and the team getting him knows that,
Mhm.
maybe that's actually a good fit. And if the Giants can't land one of the better QBs here, or to the point we made before, this isn't a stellar QB class. The next 2 years, we can never really know, but the next 2 years look really good for the people that are coming out. maybe that's the smartest move. I got a light shorting out back there. Maybe that's the smartest move is Rodgers just for a year or two. No long-term commitment, so it doesn't kill the cap moving forward, and stock up on
As if you're
all the
talking
other.
more than 2 years for Aaron Rodgers. What are you thinking? Like,
But he
it's
wasn't
barely.
bad this year. He wasn't bad.
If I could sign him, if I could sign him for a half-year contract, I would. Like, because it's gonna go downhill
Weekly,
fast when it
sign him
does.
weekly.
Yeah,
Sign him
that'd be even
1 week
better.
at a time.
Just like a good mortgage.
Yeah.
But no, okay. So listen. So here's my takeaway for this one. The buzz for Rodgers going to the Jets 2 years ago was massive, and then this past year it reached a fever pitch because the Jets were good. They had a good defense, a good running game. That's all they're missing. And Rodgers was injured, and he's going to come back. A lot of people picked them to be first in their division, going to be super competitive because the Jets were a good team, and it was absolutely not that. And even though Rodgers had some good stats, he finished the season with good stats. I feel like a lot of it came in the second half when it didn't really matter. But compare that to this year. Are the Giants better or worse than the Jets? At basically everything. And I'm going to say basically everything. So there's the fever pitch is going to be a whisper this year. If Rodgers ends up going to the Giants, it's going to be way tempered than it used to be. And I don't know if that's going to make a big difference. And I really think that the Giants would take a QB, whoever the best QB available at that point, and hopefully Rodgers mentors him for a year, and then that'll be your person going forward.
So so you actually think they're going to take Rodgers and a young QB?
Absolutely, especially if there's no other QB on the roster, because Rodgers isn't going to play 17 games. I'll tell you that
kind
now.
of like he'll be this year's Kirk Cousins.
You need a warm body to be able to roll out there to play QB, and it could be sooner rather than later, depending on, because he's only getting older. So
yeah,
I think it's I think the Giants have to do it.
Yeah,
I think the Giants have to do it, but it's I think it sets up great for now. It'd be awesome if this was a better QB class, but like I think Ward or Sanders or McCourt, like someone could hit, and so they're going to get the first few games for Rodgers starting until he gets injured or whatever. And then,
so taking a page out of the Falcons playbook, sign the old guy, draft a kid, and just see what happens. Just don't sign the old guy for as long as they did with Cousins, because he didn't even make it the year. I mean, I could see that being a thing.
I'd be shocked if Rodgers gets more than a 2-year deal. So,
I know. Well, God, man, that's. So I don't think he has any other destination. Do you think like the Titans would like trade down, take Rodgers? Like, what are they going to do with the number 1 pick? They got
that's a great question. So if I'm biased with this, I remember reading who is that? It was the Economist that like wrote a paper on that or something.
Yeah,
saying
there's
that,
an economist that said always trade away the number 1 pick because you'd never get your value for it.
Right, and I love the reasoning behind it, because 2 lower first round picks instead of the 1 top one is way better option for almost everyone, and especially this year when there's no clear number 1 QB, and it's really deep with defensive line and defensive tackle. Like you could get 2 really good like defensive linemen later in the first round, and that would be awesome, right? So now I don't know if they really need defensive line help, but it's I would this year to me it's a no-brainer, trade the first pick, but kind of a year. But anyway, I doubt they'll do it. I mean, people don't do that.
So if they I mean, Titans fans, it's a catch-22, or it's bittersweet to have the first pick, because that means you were bad enough to have the first pick. But especially in a class like this, the thing is, it's never that obvious. Again, we don't know. We never really know. Like the best quarterback ever was picked in the 6th round. I mean, Brock Purdy was the last pick, and he made it to the Super Bowl in his 2nd year, 3rd year. So it's not obvious that the first pick's going to make that much of a difference. The Jaguars have had the first pick multiple times, and it hasn't really worked out. Like Trayvon Walker was a bit of a dud of a pick. So it's sort of not, and Trevor Lawrence is definitely not working. Oh, how about this? If you ever had a can't miss first pick prospect, Trevor Lawrence was one of them, and he's just been ho-hum. Now, you could argue that the team's just terrible around him, but boy, did that ever... It's not looking that obvious when, the guy barely ever lost in college, never lost in high school. It just, he had the physical traits. It's all there, and now we're just like, he's like an afterthought, sort of.
Yeah, and the Urban Meyer thing didn't help either.
That did not help at all, that's for sure.
So looking at the Titans' biggest needs for the 2025 NFL draft, it says quarterback, edge rusher, wide receiver, right tackle, and right guard. So there's a lot of positions. And so the edge rusher being the number 2, apparently, that to me is a clear sign that you would trade the pick and go down, because I don't know.
You could trade out of that, and you could land one of the best tackles and land, and I wouldn't even take an edge rusher in the first round. I'd wait to the second round, and I'd fill some of those other needs. And you'd still, I bet you by the second round, land one of these studs for sure.
Like for sure. And really revamp the QB, the team, right? Because now you get McCord later, like your boy, and
they should do the Rodgers thing and get one of these young guys and just cut Levis loose. Levis just doesn't have it. He's just not it. The other funny thing about a guy like Rodgers going somewhere,
like right now, just on the, what's it called, the PFF? What's
Pro Football Focus, PFF? Yeah.
So it has Shamar Stewart going like 23rd projected right now, right? Yeah. So imagine getting him with your other first round pick. Like,
but you still don't even need to. I don't even think you need to go first round for defensive line. There's so many good ones. I mean, unless it's a tough call. But the other question is, do you bolster O-line first or D-line? I think O-line with this team. The thing is, if they trade out to the right team with the right, I don't know, package of, the thing is, who wants this first round pick though? Who wants this number 1 pick? Who's they trading with?
That's I don't know. That'd be, I mean, but I guess that's one of the good things about being, like having the number 1 pick. You could just say we're open to trade it and then see who comes at you, right? With whatever package.
I'm just trying to think of who would really benefit from getting the first round pick in this particular year's draft. It would have to be a team that has their eye on a very specific player, and they just want to leave no doubt that player lands on their team to I would think, have to secure a Super Bowl run. Like a team that
right, and it doesn't really seem like that's this kind of draft, right?
No. So, I mean, unless there's one guy that they're worried is going to go in the top 3 or 4, and they're sitting at like 30. Yeah. Well, like maybe the Eagles, right? They would have the last pick. So is there something? But they're not going to get all the way to number 1. They'd have to give away the farm. No, I just don't get it. What an odd year to have the first pick for a team that needs so much. And to your point, it makes a lot of sense for them to trade it to fill up. But who the hell wants this pick in this number 1 pick in this draft?
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know.
And my other note here is, what on earth are the Browns going to do? So that Watson contract, I think they were trying like hell to get him caught with some of that tape of him doing something that can kind of void the rest of his contract, but I don't think that's coming through. If that were to have come through, we would have already heard about it. And Garrett, I think just in the last 24 to 48 hours, Garrett, I think, made a statement saying, I will not play for the Browns. Like, I am going to get traded. I don't care.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I saw a thing. He's just he's not dumb. He knows he's got 3, maybe 4 years left of him playing at what he would hope is a peak level, injuries aside. And he knows that it ain't happening at the Browns. Like, he's been in the playoffs once or twice or something. It's terrible. I think he's the best edge in the league, and he's not. It would be a shame if his career goes down the books as like he's the Barry Sanders of defensive line. He's like, oh, he's one of the best ever, just never made it to the playoffs on a crappy team. But wow, what a player! Like, that's terrible. Like, this guy, somebody needs to get this guy and make the final run to the Super Bowl. And I think that's all he'll accept. Like he said, he's not going anywhere that's rebuilding. He's got to go like plug and play, like the 49ers or I saw an article saying Howie Roseman would block him from going to the Commanders and just offer him whatever it takes to get him on the Eagles, which ironically, the Eagles have so many people contracts ending, they might actually be able to swing it, which is just shows you how good of a GM and how good of a structure they have. If they can come off of that season with that defensive performance and somehow the very next year plug in Garrett, that's just insane if that could happen. But I guess I started talking more about what are the Browns going to do in the absence of Garrett. And I don't know. They just look like a complete There's so much work to do there.
Yeah, and similar to the Titans, right? We're not really sure what the Titans are going to do with number 1, and we have no idea what the Browns are going to do with number 2. So I think that the only thing that I would lean toward is the Giants going
Do the
third,
Browns have
taking the best QB
have
available at that point. So
do the Browns have the second pick?
I believe so.
Is it? Oh.
That's what it has in the mock draft simulator on your Pro
right,
Football Focus.
Well, I don't know. How can they take 4 players at second? all at once?
Yeah, no, that's what. Only if Tennessee can take 3 at 1.
Yeah,
so that'd be way better. Yeah.
Picking in the second rounds, the Browns take an entire offensive line. Wow, there's some teams in big trouble here. All right. So moving on then, I guess, to the showdown, Saturday versus Sunday. We're going to talk, I guess, about how this all really unfolds with all of these different players that we've just talked about and where they might go. Do you think Hunter or Abdul Carter or even Shedeur Sanders could possibly end up on the Titans?
Oh man, yes, I think one of those 3 could. So
and do you think Hunter's worth the first overall pick?
I think it's going to be No, I mean, I don't. We've already said that it's not a super strong QB draft class. Like I think if there was any other. Like if it was last year's draft class, for example, like there's no way Shedeur or Cam Ward goes ahead of the Daniels, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's part of it is the year that they're in. So it just depends on what you would have to plan your whole draft because you need so many things, right? For the Cleveland and Tennessee, you need so many points. You need so many help, like so many positions of help, right? So you've got to figure out if you need a QB, edge rusher, right tackle, right guard, like you've planned it out, like where you're going in the draft and free agency, so they're like, if we can get this guy at free agency, then we'll try and draft these positions, so if the hardest position to get would be an elite edge rusher or the best quarterback available, then you would take it. So
now I wonder if we could ever even know if players not showing up at the combine to, I don't know, just to whatever, compete at the participate, if that's really weighs on these GMs or not. But the one thing that sticks out in my head is Anthony Richardson and how they talk so much about how much of a physical freak show he was at the combine, and he's barely hanging on in the NFL. And so that kind of further bolsters the argument that the combine just doesn't matter if you perform well or not well. Like Cooper Kupp won the Triple Crown and his combine was kind of underwhelming. And then Richardson is the greatest ever, and he can barely, I mean, he got benched for Christ's sake. So I wonder if it matters for any of these teams, if these guys show up or not.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the year. I think it's, depending, like if it was a deeper QB class, I think Shedeur Sanders would have participated in the combine, but I think because it's where it is now, it wouldn't affect it. I think that the combine, I believe, really makes a difference for the lower ranked players, like the lower first round, second and third round stuff. And because there's people that you might not have thought about or not, might not have performed well depending on wherever their team is or something. But then if they're physically really gifted, like, maybe that could explain some of that. And so I think it really makes a difference for some of them. But just in terms of for this year, I don't know if Hunter, I don't think Sanders not performing will change where he goes in the draft, because I think if someone needs a QB, then he's going to go higher than, that'll determine where he goes. So it's I think that I'd be surprised if the Giants didn't take a QB, even if they take, Ty and Rodgers. And then at the same, the Jet, all these teams, like they're so bad. Like that's, I guess, the thing that's really
so
striking is like Tennessee is so bad. Cleveland's so really bad. Like the Giants are really bad. Like they're so the Patriots not bad. Like the Patriots could really make a difference with the 4th pick and, like bolster their teams. They've got a pretty good QB and like that. So
they at least have a roadmap now because they know what they've got at QB. Because by the end of the year, Drake may look good enough that, okay, the Patriots, that's their guy. That's okay. Yeah. Now we're building around that.
Might have some roadmap and they pick 8. Like that's fine.
He looked great in the second half of the season. He really
San
did look
Francisco
good.
Picking 11th, they're not bad. Like that'll be fine, but like, Tennessee, Cleveland, the Giants, maybe the Raiders if you want to throw them in there, or the Jets. Like there's, like you said, no
The,
roadmap.
the
So like
Raiders,
the draft could be 4 days and it wouldn't be enough for them.
the two teams. So circling back to the beginning of our show, the two teams that I think Shedeur Sanders would make the biggest media, I don't know, impact is the Raiders or the Giants. And
Okay.
I have a
Yeah.
note. I have a note here to combine to your thought. The Giants sign Rodgers and draft Sanders. Aaron Rodgers and
Ooh.
Deion Sanders in the same room. How much fun would that be? That's just not. I mean, this could be great for our show. Well, that's
In
all
New
we're going to
York.
talk about. Like that
Yeah.
in New York,
Mhm.
that you're going to have the talk of him just going, from one locker room to the other in the same stadium. Then Sanders going to one of the biggest media markets, and just all of the hype around just him, and being part of Deion's family, and just everything that comes with him being a being a Sanders. So, I mean, to me, that would be the most fun. But I really also like the idea of him going to the Raiders, and then the whole Tom Brady tie-in. So I don't know. That's where I want him to land, just for the sake of the spectacle. I don't know if it makes sense for either team, but to me, the biggest possible spectacle coming this year would be Aaron Rodgers and Shedeur Sanders at the Giants. That.
Yeah.
Come on, you guys. Joe Shane,
again,
you couldn't do any worse than last year. Just do that, and you guys will be no newsworthy for a better reason than last year.
and I'm fine with Cam Ward going there too. I'd be fine with Cam Ward going to New York or the Raiders. I'd be dying to see what he can do with that. And so but yeah, no, there's some Deion and the Giants, and that would be the podcast would literally write itself at that point.
Oh yeah,
So
totally. So much fun there. I get, and then I mean, the Jets are just an afterthought at this point. Like what are they going to do? Just, I don't know.
again, there's no roadmap. I don't know what the roadmap is for them to, like, it's a complete rebuild. Like, it's not like in baseball, a few teams have been successful tearing it completely down, stocking up draft picks, building up the AAA, the farm system. And then 3 years later, it all translates into like amazing picks and and cheap players and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's no, I think the 76ers tried that with the trust the process, but I really don't see what that is in football. Like I don't think there's a straightforward thing, because there's so many moving parts and there's so many people on the team, and coaching changes and philosophies and stuff. That's the sad part. If you're a Giants fan, there's no roadmap to success, and which is super hard. So
yeah, and certainly don't use the other team in New York as an example. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it for today. So we're recording this midday March 1st. So I don't think we have a lot of data on. We haven't really had a chance to even see who's done anything at the combine as of today. I think today's quarterbacks. So next week we're gonna do a combine wrap-up show as well. So that'll probably drop at the end of the week, and we'll address more overall, like what the response was, what happened at the combine, and then the following week we'll probably cover what teams are gonna do with that information and what we think's coming.
Now that we'll do a show of, now that the combine is over, is it going to matter?
Is it going to matter?
Based on what we just talked about for the draft coming up.
Yep. Right. All right. We'll catch you later.